So I was just gently prodded into starting this video, and I looked at the date and realized that it's 111 23. So major portal. I have been kind of out of sorts, a little in and out of sorts. I mean, right point on with some other stuff I've been doing, and then just kind of in the meantime and in between time all over the place, feeling, just really freaky, the energy shifting, and really in some doubtful places with, I'm pretty sure that, I might be nuts. I'm pretty sure I might be, just making this stuff up. And the message I keep getting, is trust, have faith, have faith, have faith. And I was going through this entire thing, listening while I was making something to eat, that, there's a lot of doubt on the planet. And as the separation of the ego, as people are having their egos just ripped right from them, their positions of power, their positions of dominance, their positions of, I'm in charge and you're going to sit down and listen to me. We see that all over, that we're losing that, and so why wouldn't it shake me up, the same as everybody else? We're all subject to the same vibration on the planet. It's just a matter of how well are we dealing with that? Are we assimilating the new information? Are we resisting the change? And how much are we willing to surrender? And do we really know when to surrender and how to surrender and why? It seems like all of that would be quite logical if we, know how, when, and why. How to surrender would be, I give up, and there really are a lot of questions in there. How to surrender, to me, is I want to make sure that how I'm surrendering is to know exactly what the surrender point is that I'm surrendering to. That how would involve conceding defeat, I guess, just conceding that I know less about this than I need to know. There's more, there's something bigger that has a need to, have me sit down and be quiet for a minute. And when I think about it in quantum entanglement terms, that, when we're connecting with higher sources, those higher sources are not malevolent, they're not beasts, and they're not, trying to harm us. That energy it's a pure frequency, and it's not about, doing human tooling. It's not human. We anthropomorphize our understanding the wrong direction. We want to say that that spirit or high frequency is addressing our karma and all of that, and that it's angry and everything. No, we're trying to drag a very high pure frequency down into our understanding. And really the truth is that we're not really doing it that way. We're really doing it that our frequency on the planet is needing to align more, going up, rather than try to drag down and create human dynamics for whatever our higher understanding would be. That God is a he, and he said, and so saith the Lord. There's no disrespect meant for deity or higher consciousness understandings, however they're rooted, whatever they're rooted in, sacred text or whatever. It's the knowledge is pure loving frequency, and it doesn't get all twisted around the axle with an ego issue about dominance. Why would it? It's pure. And if it's pure, then there is no good or bad. There is no right or wrong. It's pure loving frequency. And we really have a hard time with that. We struggle with it because, we're afraid. And we don't really know that what we're surrendering to, that's part of the what am I surrendering, when am I surrendering, and how is me submitting to understanding that I'm just releasing whatever the blockage is to trying to wrap my human avatar mind around the idea that something would be, could be, and is pure loving frequency. There isn't a need to capitulate and go, sorry, it's not asking us to do that. It doesn't ask anything, it just is. And when we brush up against it, and we don't understand it, we create all these stories and dynamics that how can you assign a human attribute to something that's not human? I've never understood that about people that get real into very specific stories about, different sacred texts and everything. It's like, you're saying, you're quoting God, and how are you doing that? And if you are, how do you know that there's just one God? We're already starting to assimilate and, make a story out of something that there aren't any stories in it other than our different understandings of that same vibrational field. The 4D, 5D, 1200D, however many Ds there are, there's many, an endless supply of them. And how can we really assign a whole lot of human understanding to it? Well, in the beginning, I suppose that we had to understand it somehow, and so we had to understand it through our human understanding. But we're pretty far into really matching up quantum world with, sacred and spiritual, in many ways. And so, at this point, what would keep us from losing the titles and just obeying, surrendering to whatever's blocking me from remembering that I am a purely loving being? And I'm living in a place that's in great transition, obviously, as we're letting go of, matrix understandings. Just bend the spoon, dude. There is no spoon. And, a lot of us, we're going to have a hard time with really believing that the Matrix is anything more than a cool movie with a really cute looking dude. And it is that. I mean, it really is. Quantum science is marrying us up with sacred, and if we don't even choose to look that direction and we stay stuck in some idea that God's a dude and that he's vengeful, how can pure love, I believe Jesus was saying, love your brother and love your neighbor, do everything with love. I'm not sure that I can buy that a man who is willing and surrendered to the whole process of death and resurrection, that we could really assign some thing to him that there is, sorry, that there is something other than that. That's not what he said. That's not what he demonstrated. When you think about Buddha being enlightened, these great ascended masters told us very clearly that pure love is pure love. And when we get confused about that, it's because we come from programming that isn't that. Human beings aren't purely loving. We have free will. And Jesus had free will too, and so did Buddha. As far as my understanding, I'm not going to go out there and say this is a Sims game and I'm being motored by something else, because I can always choose to think something else, and it would be, really into the illogical that just doesn't work for me to believe that there's a game being played with my own mind and that I don't ultimately have free will. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to effectively change the many things that I've been able to change the more I run from the Matrix and explode all that matrix programming in my own mind of, nah, I'm not doing that anymore. So if we have the ability, right, to have free will, then we can choose to be jerks. We can choose to be loving, and the planet continues to move into a higher frequency. We're getting out of 3D. We're going to all be able at some point, 10 days from now, 10 million years from now, I don't know, time is, irrelevant and it's not necessary. But I mean, we do run under the time construct at the moment, but at some point we're all going to be X-Men, and we're all going to be able to bend the spoon and put our hands through, perceived walls and all that. And while we still have folks that are just locked and loaded on, it's this way, it just blows my mind. I'm like, why would you not, surrender to this process where you're going to lose? We're, as a species, we're losing a lot of stuff that, aren't we all ready? No, we're not. Many of us are ready to lose that. Go ahead and let's lose that, because that's a losable thing. That's an okay thing to lose. We can let that domination thing go. How many of us with our free will want to be imprisoned by something, and yet we start by imprisoning ourselves a lot. By the time, we reach adulthood, when we don't have, guidance, whether it was good or bad really is irrelevant, but we no longer have the guidance that we're forced to take. Why are we not really understanding that our free will dictates that we can choose to do something else, and we can choose to not be imprisoned by, bullshit parenting or bullshit job descriptions or bullshit titles, roles, or constructs of stuff that just doesn't work for us. It used to crush my soul. Like every day I would be so confused, like what the hell, and listen to high figure people or high profile figures that are making rules and dynamics that are just like, how do you get to decide that? How do you get to decide that what someone does in their bedroom is any of your business? I don't get that. I just don't get that. What people do for their drug use or whatever. I'm like, I would be more concerned with the addiction part of it than how you reach your happy spot. Is there addiction? Is there crime? Is there a huge imbalance in how you're acquiring your ecstasy experience? And because it is that, yes, it's way out of balance. It's terrible. I've never actually taken ecstasy, so I can't speak to it. However, it's the soul's desire with these major active ingredients and psychedelics and stuff. Where our soul is searching and reaching out and just desperate to find the portal entry to other stuff besides this matrix and the bullshit that runs it, which is just old programming of, when are we going to surrender to this process that it's not a Sims game? Screw the Sims game idea. I'm not surrendering to some gaming nerd in another dimension somewhere. That's just, that's going to make me want to give up, have no hope whatsoever, and just allow, the high profile people in the game to have more control. And, how am I going to ever find any sense of peace or anything else if I truly believe that? So even if I'm wrong, okay, that's fine. I can surrender to the idea that I may be wrong. I'd rather surrender to the idea that I may be wrong and really move in the direction that I'm probably right for me. And it keeps me sane, keeps me peaceful, keeps me happy, and keeps me in a high vibration. Then why would I want to not surrender to me? It's just illogical. Like, why would you keep on saying yes to stuff that's killing the planet, killing people around us? How do we get so far away from that God source or that pure frequency that we're this dead, as people? I personally don't feel dead like that, but it just blows my mind. Like, why don't you concede? I went to see Wakanda Forever the other day for the second time. And there's just the point where Namor, Black Panther's got Namor just pinned to the ground with her spear. She's like, surrender, concede defeat or yield, you must yield. And she could choose, with that free will thing, she could choose to say, I'm just going to murder you because you're a threat to Wakanda. And, no, I don't care what your underwater world is about. You're out, because you've come after me. You've done this, you've done that. My mother's dead and I'm going to hold it way against you. D-bag, it's over. I mean, she could have gotten real super personal about it. And whoever the other leader of one of the other tribes in Wakanda said to her beforehand, are you going to be like your brother? Or are you going to be like your uncle or whomever? Like, how are you going to choose? Are you going to choose? Essentially, the takeaway for me was for your own vengeance or for the greater good. And she pretty much was telling him, up yours, I'm going to avenge my mother's death. Screw that dude. He's out. I'm done. No way. He cruelly did this. And I mean, she had all the reasons and the good justification for why she would want to do him in based on her emotion. However, when she got there to it, she was deeply plagued with, I'm not going to just murder this fish dude that's got all these talents and stuff, because it takes out the entire population of his kingdom. And she gave him the opportunity, though, of yield or die. He was dying anyway. And she got the upper hand long enough to say, stop this nonsense, because your whole kingdom is going to die and mine will continue to move on. I mean, it will just continue the war. And why would you not yield? That's what, I build into that whole understanding is, why would you not? You're risking a whole lot just to, hold on to your pride, your ego. Surrender that shit immediately, so that your people your fishes, your Namorettes all have an opportunity to be salvaged in this, and it's not going to be down to me avenging my mother and just murdering you right off the top, or you being too, egoic, excuse me, to not understand that you're going to stop. And ultimately, the way I see it, I'm not the writer of that script, nor am I, those particular personalities, but this seems the typical human progression of thought would be that, Namor would be frightened of what would happen, if he yielded, what would happen if he didn't, that it's fear and that lack of surrender. And I thought about it that, if I'm truly as committed as I say to moving my energy up and up and up and up and up, then would I be willing to understand that I surrender to every moment, every way to know how to play, if you will, how to move my energy forward. I'm surrendering to that higher energy and for the greater good of humanity and Earth as a whole organism. Then could I, in fact, be okay in my energy and my understanding and my thinking? Could I be okay with knowing that what if I was murdered? What if, tragedy, a lot of tragedy has already come into my life and left. However, let's talk about it, that would you be willing, would I be willing to, just actively martyr myself? No, like set myself on fire. I was going to say, is that a emulate, there it is. I say it's not ameliorate, to emulate myself, just to stand on my position. I don't know, am I being called to do that? Really the lesson is more about not exactly, what the martyrdom situation would be. It's, do you have the stones and the faith to believe that if you were taken there, it would be with the understanding that that's what, the greater good would be for humanity, and let it go, and could you be okay in your thinking with knowing that that's, a blockage? Do you have that kind of faith? Do you have that lack of fear? Thank you. That you wouldn't, say, okay, I surrender. I surrender. And I'm not talking about, not taking prudent action or putting myself in dangerous situations willingly. It's just, it occurred to me, this morning as I'm just feeling all this chaos and stuff, and like, what would be the worst thing that would happen? What's the worst thing you can think of, Kate, that you wouldn't want to have to make a decision about? And like, well, I'm thinking murder would be right up there. Like I don't want to experience a whole lot of, physical trauma, torture, POW, that kind of stuff. I'm not into it. I don't want to do that. And like, what really? Well, can we get through the blockage here that maybe, get okay? Not that, I'm approving of that magnetizing its way to me somehow, that I'm just looking to, just get okay with it. What if? That's a blockage if there's anywhere that you're not willing to surrender to this process. And that's pretty intense. I mean, it's like, I'm not signing up for POW camp at my, like by doing this or saying this, but it was just the understanding and the learning that really at what point does your faith and your true courage, at what point do you lose that? At what point do you no longer, well, I changed my mind if it goes there? That's me manipulating and controlling because there's something in my ego that doesn't want to do it that way. And it's reasonable. By human standards, it's very reasonable. Nobody wants to, be lit on fire for any cause. And yet, if you put it in the correct context, that would I allow myself to be set on fire if it's salvaged and saved my children, then yeah, light her up and get them out of here right now. So I mean, it depends on the context, and like, well, and like, but you either are willing to, take that process as it comes, or you're not, and because I don't run the programming of outer space or, divine frequency, nor the matrix, I operate within it as I'm moving my frequency up, then I really, how much of that do I get to say, well, I'm willing to do it here, but not here? How much do you believe that there's something bigger than you guiding you and teaching you and showing you is really there and is in charge of that? I'm in charge of my avatar. However, if I'm listening very clearly to command, then I'm going to need to really trust that, if I'm a private in an army, if I don't really have faith in the general, or the war college didn't burp out, the high achievers for some reason, and he's running my command. If I don't believe that there's really that 100% pure frequency, loving frequency, that's it, then I'm really just kind of bartering everywhere I go with some understanding that I'm willing to do this, but not this. And I'm willing to be high frequency here, but not here. And again, it weirds out and gets into some, mind games within my own head of, well, but, why would Spirit ask me to do that? Well, that's not really the question to ask. The question to ask and answer is, are you willing to surrender at all costs to higher frequency, not to human bullshit stuff? That's different, to just have a person tell me, you need to do this, you should do this. No, if I'm hearing, my avatar has got, this going right in it, then I'm gonna know. And that's another piece of the faith thing, is how much faith do you have that, you're not going to hear us one day? Do you hear us now? Well, sometimes. Okay, well, when you don't hear us, or you think you don't hear us, are we still there? Yeah, I guess so, because the sun's still there, even though I don't see it. The sun doesn't go away. I go away briefly, and then I come back. So, it's really all a matter of perspective and understanding, how to assimilate the information to get rid of the block, whatever it is, in understanding, and move through those blockages. Just helps us get ascend and get to the point where, it's all just mind games for Neo, that bend the spoon. There is no spoon. Just do it, just do it. And we don't really have an understanding. There's no comparable or comparison, unless we start looking at lost civilizations and things. We really don't have relative information that we know about and can prove, that really addresses any of it. And when we start talking about lost civilizations, we lose a bunch of people because they already think it's stupid. Well, that couldn't be. Why not? If they made a movie about the Matrix, then where do you think that came from? It has to exist in some dimension somewhere, even if it's only in an imagination. That is an existence. We don't think thoughts that just go into a non-void area, or a void area where there's nothing, there's just non-anything. There's no place where God is not, meaning that the energy is neither created nor destroyed, so that imagination space has to be absorbed somewhere and changed, or upgraded, or whatever it is. And it goes into, some pretty complex ideas about which dimension it is and everything, except we don't, as the average person, need to do anything with that, unless we're highly interested in studying quantum world in a brand new way. However, understanding on the just basic level that it's real, in that it's as real as any other thought we have. If we think we love our cat, that's very real, right? Why wouldn't it be that we think that movie Matrix, is real? It's real somewhere. And the love we have for our cat is just demonstrated differently than the Matrix understanding. We think we love our cat, and we can show and prove, to our human brains that we love our cat by petting it, and loving on it, demonstration of. Whereas we watch a movie and we think, oh, that's really cool, that's a movie, and yet we think we have no way to really prove that out here, and we have proof of it everywhere. It's a matter that for some reason when we walk out of the theater, we're just sure that that's just some bullshit, and that was a great movie, but that's some bullshit for believing that that's anything relative to what's actually going on. And, days when I'm pretty sure that I don't think this is real. I think I might be, on my edge of, just go over the edge into the deep end hard with what. I have to really kind of chuckle a little bit and go, well, what do you see in the world that's happening? Deconstruction of some very old terrible ideas, that age of Pisces stuff, that matrix stuff, and stop short of believing that the people around me are Agent Smith, because then I'm going to get very judgy and very blocked with believing that I got to kill this person because they're a threat. No, that's where that loving frequency thing is. Like, hold on, and it's very easy to kind of just, I don't know, desensitize ourselves to the idea that pure love is here and it's not leaving, yet we've got hard battle going on with everybody's an Agent Smith, or I'm not Neo, whichever way you go with that. I don't know how people ego identify with what they're seeing around them. I just know that it can be very complex for me to try to identify and understand what I am anyway. However, right now it's just like, oh my God, what is this? Where do I belong? Because it doesn't make sense to anything that we've understood and legitimized as understanding in my lifetime at a minimum, and probably a few thousand million, I don't know how many years on Earth, but definitely, for history, as far as we know it goes back, we can't really quantify. We think that Atlantis or Lemuria or any of these places actually existed. Like, we've got proof of what do you call that? The shape of Earth. And yet we have people who deny that routinely and get into conspiracy theories about how that's possible or why. And it just makes me curious. I'm like, why? What would be the because I've tried to go into the surrender to the idea that the Earth is flat, and science tells me differently. Science, that's where I get my factual information. I don't try to meld my spiritual understanding with factual information when it's not marrying up. I'm not going to build a whole story. I'm going to surrender to, there's a spear on my neck, and surrender the Earth is here. Is this what it is? And there's too much evidence to be trying to contradict it with other stuff that doesn't have a whole lot of evidence. If there was a whole lot of proof that the flat earth theory was actually true, then I would go with that one. But when we have overwhelming evidence and multiple sources throughout the entire world, it kind of breaks down with that conspiracy idea of how is it that we get an entire body of the entire earth that we've all been snowed and bullshitted and believing that it's round. And I mean no disrespect to anybody that believes the earth is flat. They seem to have good arguments. They think they do. And yet, when you take into context the laws of physics, astrophysics, all of the science of it, then it's really, you're asking me to believe stuff we've proven, that's demonstrated. It's not just that we're proving that the sphere is here. The sphere is everywhere. Sphere is a sphere. A globe is a globe is a globe. And it's not like, it's disproving just one thing or proving just one thing. Gravity is the same everywhere on Earth. Gravity is the same. It acts the same whether you're standing here, there, or anywhere else. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if you're sitting in a movie theater watching Matrix information. Gravity's still the same. So, and you can't change that. That's a law that can't be broken. So if I can identify, everywhere where stuff is just proven to me, I can't prove that, people have bent spoons on the large scale. However, it has been proven, and it's been, not been debunked that somebody has been able to do that people have been able to manifest the booty, and do things that appear to be, an anomaly. However, if they happened and they were not able to be debunked in any way, then don't we have to say that that's reproducible? It could have been done one time, then it can be reproduced and done another time and another time and another time. It's just a matter of how quickly is that going to happen by getting through all the blockages that would make us believe that it couldn't or wouldn't or shouldn't happen. That's fear. And am I going to surrender? What am I surrendering to? Am I going to surrender to the idea that I'm just dying for my ego cause, or am I dying for no reason, that I'm going to just surrender and say, okay, it's not worth it to me? Surrender to this process, and details beyond that, just wherever it is, why ever it is, as long as I know You know, when Black Panthers got me pinned to the ground, you know, and I've got a lot at stake here to not surrender to the highest cause, the highest vibration, then how much do I really believe? If I'm willing to give it up at some point, that's the amount of faith I have. It's just right up to that point that I'm not willing to transform my body, my soul, my mind, whatever. And why? And that's where I go with it. Is I'm not saying again that I would be happy with, yeah, please just take my life, because I'm not putting it out there like that. I'm saying that if I was taken to, I have been taken to places that I don't like this, and that's where I'm routinely reminded that, all right, what don't you like about it? And I give the whole list of reasons, and they're valid, you know, as a human being. And then, okay, well, how are we going to work with this? Because it is where you are. For whatever reason, you're here. You want to get into the whole ego struggle of why, and shame on you. We could do that, but why? Is it applicable to helping you unblock whatever is holding up this process that would keep you stuck in all the deets of that blockage? Do we want to just get to the problem solving of the blockage being removed and get to the freedom of, I go when I go, and I surrender to spirit every step of the way, and anywhere where I'm hung up, you know, it's related to my ego, it's related to a very real struggle that's more prominently noticed at huge planetary shifts. And, you know, 111 might be kind of a I'm lying on my bed going, I feel kind of weird, and yet I do know, my soul knows. I mean, that's the weirdest spot ever, honestly. It's confusing as that my soul knows, like, you got this, you're good, like, but my mind, yep, it's your mind. Well, how do I separate that out? Well, you don't. You surrender to the process, and you do whatever part of this tear down, breakdown of your own matrix that we give you to do. And you support that through, you know, how whatever is given to you or that you're inspired to do. Same thing. What the downloads are for how to support that movement through the blockages. And the more I can do that and really stay focused on that, I can care a whole lot less about what other people are doing, and let them do whatever they need to do. And it frees up so many blockages of judgment, you know, all of that, you know, just forget that all of that exists. You know, when Neo goes through some of his experiences, he's just slammed by himself, isn't he? Like, you know, what is this? And yet that's kind of how it is. And it's also that he's with other people, not Agent Smith. So, I mean, we have to understand ourselves in that multidimensional experience, that we're going through this puzzle, you know, this maze of, you know, some bullshit, while we're phasing out the 3D experience as it is. And it's going to be perhaps a little bit weird. In the fourth movie, the dude has no idea who he is, and he has to wake up again, you know, and yet he's already been this, you know, basically beast hero for 3 whole movies, and you get to the 4th one and he's a computer programmer that's programmed the Matrix, the game, you know. And it took a minute for him to remember and recall and brush up on the skills. And, you know, it doesn't have anything to do with reincarnation necessarily. I mean, I don't limit it to that. Like, reincarnation on Earth is just considering one facet of what is a multi-faceted thing that, you know, reincarnation and waking up, you know, for him, I guess you could consider it that, especially if they were talking about another iteration of the game, you know, whatever, however we contextualize it is really irrelevant, as long as we get to the end game of get through the blockage of whatever it would be that would have you believe something less than the truth, which is pure frequency of love is where we're headed. And people in whatever the time span is, the human construction of time, whatever the time frame is on things, we are moving either back into again, or for the first time, irrelevant, into having X-Men kind of powers and the ability to transport ourselves, you know, through dimensions. We already can do that, if we believe that. and be able to put our hands through walls and bend spoons and, fly and do all of this stuff and heal ourselves through quantum understandings that, if we ever did possess them on the planet, that's the suggestion from, Atlantis, etc. If we're willing to open up the door that it was ever possible, then we'll understand a whole lot more about how to much more quickly get to that higher frequency. If we aren't even willing to believe that that's real, that's then bullshit. Why is it bullshit? We can't prove it, but you can prove that the earth is round. So, I mean, choose my I don't believe it thing very carefully. I choose to go with what I see, what I feel, and how that all marries up, and what the evidence-based stuff is of what's the facts of this, of what I see, along with what I feel and what I am getting downloads about. And when quantum science can tell me a whole lot, boy, that certainly changed my whole experience of how I was doing my spiritual understanding, and made a whole lot of sense about how it no longer mattered that, I'm going to have somebody tell me that I need to tithe 10% in order to get what I want. Like, that really just doesn't work for me. That sounds like you're manipulating some stuff there, and I don't dig it. Not meant to shame on anybody. It's just, that's me putting it out there that I want, and I want it this way. Yes, we all, would prefer to have a nice cush life, I guess. I mean, who wouldn't? However, I haven't had that. Doesn't mean that I wouldn't embrace it. I embrace what Spirit is giving to me as my part of what's your job, what's your purpose, what's your reason for being here, Kate. Is it that we're going to guide you through this for your highest good and for the highest good of the planet? Or is it that you get to run your avatar however the hell you want to because you figured out a, back door to, I'll just tithe 10%. It works because energy manipulation is possible. We see it. It's all over the place. So manipulating and manifesting and law of attraction is quite, valid, and it's real. It's why are we manifesting that way, or what are we manifesting? What are we asking for, and why? And I can no longer follow the whole track with, law of attraction when we're abusive about it, or when we teach others that get what you want and get to that buffet table and stuff your face hard and enjoy that. When there's, the death of the planet is imminent. Excuse me, I'm having trouble with this. Death of the Matrix? Hell yes, let's go. Death of Earth herself? No, I'm not on board. So, and am I willing to die for that cause? Then yes, I am. Ultimately, I surrender to what is given to me as, here's your assignment and your divinement, baby, and listen carefully to that. And I don't throw myself under buses just, to say I'm a martyr. If I have to tell people I'm a martyr, I'm full of shit. I don't believe Jesus announced himself and said, well, I'm going to die, on this cross because, all of your sins, you losers, and he could do this. There wasn't that struggle, that ego thing. He just very quietly went on with doing what he was doing. He understood his mission from his commander-in-chief, his father, whomever he yielded to, pure loving frequency, then he understood, I'm doing this and I've got to do this. And he still had to work through being a human, which is how, when he surrendered and took his last breath, he ascended by losing the whole ego thing and losing any part of control that he might want to have. Do you suppose this human might not want to have suffered the physical pain and the emotional pain of being deserted and abandoned and betrayed by his own disciples? Do you suppose, his human being probably, could have felt real chapped a bit on that, what the hell? He's like, what? And being scorned and spat on and stuff. Like, this is a holy person. I mean, this is somebody that can do some really cool stuff, not illusion, bullshit. This isn't a magic show. This is real stuff here. And, do you suppose maybe he wouldn't have wanted to be treated like that if he'd stopped just with his human understanding, though? He would have never made it to the cross. He was probably, I don't know, if I would assume that he was able at that point to be able to just vanish if he wanted to. So he could have eluded all these, marauders, pirates, and, looting assholes. He could have, probably taken care of Judas on his own, and yet by going with the flow and surrendering to the process, Judas learned, in that process of where he should have, maybe could have, would have, where he could have surrendered somewhere else in a different direction. And yet he chose, and that's the way it went. Jesus never strayed. even in, all the temptations and all of that. And even on the cross, a lot of people have different interpretation of what, crying out to Father, why hast thou forsaken me? A lot of people have different interpretation of what that means. And yet at the very surface level, even though he might have been questioning, do you suppose that as a man he wouldn't have questioned it, and yet his feet kept walking and doing and carrying his cross, that, he was the ultimate martyr. However, he did not announce his martyrdom, even though he knew one of you bitches is going to betray me and it's going to go bad, it's going to suck. He knew it quietly and just kept going. And I imagine that was kind of the forerunner to, hey, whoever you are that's thinking about you betraying me, here's your chance to choose differently, to get to the loving frequency, dude. You might want to choose differently. You don't want to choose different? Okay, well, I'm going this way regardless, because it's going to change the whole nature and the vibration of this planet. Regardless of how you choose, someone will betray me, Judas, and move this in that direction anyway, because the planet was needing to ascend back then, so anyhow, I think that's enough. Yeah, I think that's enough.